So would it be presentation first, demo, and then hosting questions?
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's actually, yeah. You want to switch? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, my name is Chad Marshall,
My name is Stephen Key.
and we developed a search system using KWIC indexing.
All right, first of all, I'll talk about the allocation of work. What I did was I made the line set, line storage, line or Alphabetizer, circular shifter, some of the micro-minor components, and I also designed the diagrams for the system.
And I made the user interface, part of the master control. I also linked the MySQL database to the Java application and also the Tomcat server as well. And a little bit of the micro-minor.
All right, let's talk about the use case diagram. So first of all, there are two types of users, an admin and a client. The admin can input lines into the system, and the client can search for keywords from the system. And when the admin inputs lines, the application server will circulate that input. Go ahead. Looking at the sequence diagrams, first of all, an admin can input lines, which means they'll put the lines into the user interface, and the user interface will bring them directly into the database server. And when a client searches for keywords, it'll ask for the application server. Well, it'll send those keywords to the application server. The application will send the keywords to the micro-minor. It'll get those results, which will pass those results on to the client. Go ahead. And the sequence diagram for Circulate input is, it starts with the application server getting the lines from the database and then creating a line storage and setting all the characters for that line storage. Then when the circular shifter asks for a character from the line storage, it'll give it to it straight out. Then when the Alphabetizer asks for a character from the circular shifter, it'll pass that onto the line storage and bring it back to the Alphabetizer. All right, looking at the component diagram, for one input, the initial input is a string that'll be passed from the input to line storage, to circular shifter, to the Alphabetizer, to the output, all through get character. And then that will create the alphabetical shifts, which will be the final output. And then for another input, it requires the keywords, which will go to the micro-minor, which will get the same characters from the Alphabetizer and pass out the search results, which will be the final output there. Looking at the class diagram, let's see, where should I start? You start with line storage right here, which has an array of lines, which has an array of words. This line storage implements the line set interface, which stores the circular shifter and the Alphabetizer. The Alphabetizer is something that the micro-minor reads from. The master control works with line storage, circular shifter, and Alphabetizer. And then the update component over here controls the master control, which the update DAO controls the update, and there are multiple D lines as part of the update DAO. Okay. Now a word is an array list of characters. Get character just gives the array list, the get character method just gets the character at that index of the word. Go ahead. A line is an array list of words that also has a string URL. The get URL will just return the URL, and the get character will find that word in its index and then get a character from that word. Line storage is an array list of lines. See, the get character will find a certain line in its set and then call the get character method to that line. And that line set implements the line storage implements the line set interface, which uses the get character, line count, word count out, and character add methods. And the circular shifter, which is also an line set, has a line set reference, an array list of lines, an array list of offsets. Go ahead. So if the reference looks something like this with 3 lines, one says first line, second line, third line, go ahead. The circular shifter would look like this. It has an array of lines pointing to the original line and then an array of offsets showing how many words offset that word would be. Go ahead. And the get character first of all looks for the line index, and then it makes a new variable a to determine where that offset would be. If it has to wrap around, it will. And then it finds the get character at the ith line and the 8th word in the kth character. The alphabetizer is also an I-line set. It has, let's see, it has a circular shifter reference and also an array of indices and also an array of where characters and a character tree showing all of the characters that an alphabetizer would have. Go ahead. So if an alphabetizer, well, if the reference of an alphabetizer looked like this, go ahead. The alphabetizer would have indices pointing to which lines on the reference it would be so that they will all be alphabetized. And its get character looks for that index from its array of indices and gets the ith index from the jth word from the jth character. Which one is this? Okay, yeah, the microminer. The only thing that a microminer really has is a reference to an alphabetizer. So go ahead. And the main method for the alphabetizer is the search query. So it'll take a string of keywords separated by spaces, and then it'll make an array list of array lists of lines that match every single keyword. And then down here, it'll filter out every keyword for only the lines that have all of those keywords. And that microminer also uses a lines that match method. What this thing does is it'll take one keyword and then find every line. Well, yeah, it'll find every line. It'll find every circular shifted line that starts with that keyword and then get the unshifted index of that line. Go ahead. And that also uses the is keyword method, which goes over here. It will, where am I looking? It'll find the first line in a circular shifted line and then return whether or not that word is the same word as the word that was passed into it. And that's where you go.
Awesome. So now we have master control. Master control is the heart and soul of everything. It manages and executes certain operations like circular shifting, alphabetizing, and the microminer. And then it also gathers the indices needed for later in the online implementation. And then next we have a continuation of master control. We just have a display method, which is for our purposes for debugging. And then we also have display line, which outputs the line storage object, whether it's master control or alphabetizer, just whatever we want, into a single string. Next, we have D-line. This is the model for stuff going in and out of the database. And so we just have a string description and URL, and then we have, I think, accessors for each. Next, we have update. So this is how we make post and get requests to the database. This get request isn't really being used, but if I were to rewrite the index JSP program, I would probably use it instead of calling straight to an update, which you'll see shortly. Here is the post method. Now what it does is it takes the whatever is resulted from the user input. Yeah, it takes that and then it sends that and oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it takes the user input on the admin side and then it parses it into description and URL, and then it sends each individual one to the database, and then the result is then outputted to the screen. And then next we have so the database connection setup stuff. So what it does is it establishes connection to the MySQL database, and then it also houses the insert method, which does insert each individual description and URL. And then next we have our in-house get method, which then we use to display the output of the whatever we get from the database. Next is our index.jsp. So this is what the user sees whenever they open up our application. So we just have the form there, and then we also have just a couple other things like our buttons. And then here is the fun part. So with JSP, you can actually have inline Java. And so, I mean, it's probably bad practice, but for this, it was kind of fun. And so what we ended up doing is using string interpolation to be able to take Java elements and make them into something that the HTML or JavaScript can see. And that is pretty much how we went back and forth as far as getting the data from the database. And then we also then call master control inside of there as well. And then once master control finishes up its thing, we're then able to get the output and then display it to the user with T2 there and then right there. Okay, so next here's the admin side. So where the an admin or whoever really can enter in descriptions of URL pairs separated by new line, and then it just has a submit and reload. All right, so for the IDE he used NetBeans, but I used Eclipse, and I like Eclipse better. We also used a MySQL database to send data back and forth, and then we also used a Tomcat server. And then this up here is our connector we used for the MySQL database. All right, so let's go ahead and get this demo up. All right. So we can go ahead and run on server. We're in Tomcat. Now we do have some pre-populated lines based on the test stuff that you sent. You can actually see it here in the database of the universities and the respective URLs. We'll get back to that. Okay, so say, what does the user want to search for? The user wants to search for Oklahoma. Submit. Aha, we have 3 results. And so we always want to clear. Next, we want to search for state university. Submit. Whoa. Next, we want to search for Arizona. Arizona. Oh, that's interesting because the test output actually had Arizona State University. I was wondering why it didn't. I was like, what? So that's cool. It works. I mean, it works. Okay, so next we can go to the admin page. So say if we want to add more data to the database, we can do hello world hi, and then for the URL www. What is the HTTPS? No, it's
it starts with HTTPS.
HTTPS www.moo.com, and then we can also do another one. So fish, why not? HTTPS www.fish.com. Okay, we can submit. We can see that the data was entered successfully, and then we can just back. We can check to see if the data was correctly input. So we can refresh the query. As you can see, the data is there in the database. Now let's search for fish. And we have fish. Okay, so that is our system. We can go ahead and answer the questions for the hosting stuff too.
Okay, so do you still do the circular shift? When you add new lines, then do you circular shift that sort?
Yes, we do. If you could go back to the presentation at the
Yes.
Alphabetizer.
Yes, let me go ahead and share screen again.
Yeah.
Share screen. And then find the thing. Right here. Which slide would it be on?
Probably about 10 or so. No, keep going. I think it's the first line of the Alphabetizer. Yes, okay. So the Alphabetizer has this where array and this character tree array. And the way that it uses this is that the where array will search through the character tree at every line, and then it'll find every line that starts with each of these characters. If it doesn't find one, the index at where will be -1. If it does find one, the index will be the index of that line. And so the microminer uses that by asking for where a certain character would be. And then it'll only search the lines that start with that character. That way it doesn't have to search the entire array. It just has to search for circularly shifted lines that start with a specific character.
Any other questions?
Yeah, you guys also try to make it work in the cloud, so. then
We
what
also
happens-
tried, yes. Yes, we were unsuccessful, but I feel we can answer the questions. Let me go ahead and stop screen sharing real quick. I can pull up the questions here so I can see them. Okay. Okay, yeah. So do we need to talk about the paper that we also read as
Yeah,
well?
just briefly, talk about.
Yes, so the paper that I wrote about was about Amazon's EC2 instances, since that's what I had the most, I guess, experience with trying to implement it through hosting. And the paper specifically was over the efficiency of spot instances as far as price and price is concerned. And this is very important to me because, I mean, I would say the EC2 instance, the one I had, even though it wasn't a spot instance, it still had about 20 hours of uptime of me just tinkering and working on it for the past 3 days. And I was very glad to see that it didn't really cost anything. But, I mean, if you mess up once, with an infinite for loop or whatever, and you don't notice it in time, that can rack up huge charges. And so specifically what a spot instance is it kind of takes the leftover computing that is not being used, and then it's auctioned off to users for the lowest price or highest price, but it's usually really, really low. And so as far as so the pros and cons of cloud computing. I mean, it's cool. I don't have to actually set up a server for myself. I've wanted to set up a server for years. However, once you open that up to the public, whole wide world internet, that's scary. I mean, people can come and people attack your network every single day, and then it's your ICMP that blocks that. And once you loosen those restrictions, that's a scary area to get into. And so I like having that sense of security of, hey, my server is somewhere else that I don't have to worry about that. If it gets hacked, all I have to do is either, if I want to keep it, stop this session. If I want to terminate it, terminate it. And what else? The learning experience. So the learning experience, that was good. I wasn't able to get it up and running completely because I had a mismatch in the Java versions, the JDK and JRE on my development setup versus what the Amazon's EC2 instance had. And so that was causing all kinds of problems. And I'm still trying to figure out how to install Java on Linux. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so you guys can still work on it, and send me a link whenever you get it done. So
I have questions.
yeah, the easiest way is you just put your source code to EC2, then recompile in the same environment, then it will work.
Yeah, but no. Yeah, I can show you sometime.